Yeah.
Okay, here's a good one. I am moving to Chicago from out of state. What is the best way to find a home in a more remote capacity?
Yeah, so that is a really, really, really good question, especially since we've had a couple clients, even in the last month, ask this because they are moving here from out of state. So I have a client who's moving here from Atlanta, and a lot of it has to come down to availability. That's our biggest thing. I we can always do everything remote. Like, obviously the pandemic has changed drastically, has changed the way
Helped
that
a
we
lot.
sell real estate. Between like 3D video tours and just FaceTime and Zoom calls and doing all of that, which allows us to kind of do a lot of that upfront.
Yep.
I always try to suggest somebody come in to the city. If you can make at least one weekend, it's a small cost, but it'll be way more beneficial in the long run.
1,000% agreed.
We can eventually do FaceTime showings after we get that first initial weekend out of the way, but I'd rather have you come into the city. I want to see you. I want to get to know you a little bit better so that I can advise you a little bit better. B, let's get out and neighborhood shop, because most people who are moving from out of state don't really know the neighborhoods. And as much as we can talk about the neighborhoods and do all of that, there is sort of a feeling that comes from just walking about and kind of getting a real feel for the neighborhood.
Totally.
And then, just also looking at the houses. Because unfortunately, the thing with that is if we're doing FaceTime showings, we're literally only doing FaceTime showings for the property. It's not getting the in-between stuff.
Yep.
So you're kind of missing out. So I always say, first weekend, come in, let's do a major tour. If we don't find a property in that weekend, yes, we can do FaceTime showings. But
yeah, no, I think so many good points in there. I mean, the reality is the pandemic changed the way we did business, and it made it that we had the ability to do so much more virtually than we did before, which is great. That being said, there is a ton of work that we can accomplish in a face-to-face capacity. Mm-hmm. And I think we both work from the same ways. Our ability to walk through just even a few properties with somebody, it helps us with the subjective nature of what we do, right?
Totally.
Because to one person, something is going to be small. It's going to be huge to the next.
Yep.
To one person, the finishes are going to be beautiful and they're going to be terrible for the next. So to be able to get a little bit of that person's subjectivity in a property is really helpful. Because then we, with our backgrounds and knowing everything, we can say, okay, here's the pieces of the puzzle. Here's how we need to connect it. Here's the homework for you to be in the neighborhood. So I agree with you. We can do so much virtually. Truth be told is we have clients that we've never kind of met face-to-face until they've gotten here. So it is possible. But if we have the ability to even get somebody in for even a day, that can really help to streamline the process. Yes, that day would be great if we can find the property, but even if we can't, it just sets the momentum moving forward. Now, I would say the other thing that is probably important to note with regards to this whole remote access is I think the time of year really plays into it as well.
Yeah.
Because we've seen it a lot lately as we've been in these more competitive markets. If we have a buyer that is more remote, either if they want to come into something at some point in time and they can't get in quickly, then it's a lot of times gone.
Yeah.
And even if it's somebody that's willing to buy remote, if we're writing offers in a competitive situation, sight unseen, they're not being given the same attention as somebody that's walked through the property because there's fear that they might.
The seller may be a little bit more concerned
Totally.
about them
And
actually
it's understandable. It's completely.
Totally.
So sometimes it and it's not always possible, especially with job relocations, but if it's somebody is going to do more of a remote process, trying to be a little bit outside of our peak times probably is in their best interest as well.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you.
I was going to even say it's like a dating list. You know how when you go on dates and you're like, this is my wish list of things, but then they're like good on paper, but then you get to the date and you're like, no, there's just something off. That's why we like them coming in to see the properties.
I haven't been on a first date in over 21 years,
Well,
so I
go
don't
on a
know.
lot of first dates, and I am just telling you, paper and then actually getting out. Yes,
it
makes a huge difference.
For certain. So here's my question for you. Okay. During the depths of the pandemic, did you sell any properties completely virtual?
I did, yeah. So I felt like 2020 right after March, right? So this is April.
Yep.
My clients still needed to buy something because leases were coming up and everything. And during that time, people were just not letting people in their houses. And so, yes, we literally had to FaceTime show a lot of properties, and I had 3 or 4 clients buy just FaceTiming. Now, the good thing is we did a lot of legwork. We like had a lot set up, and they were here in Chicago, where they knew exactly what was happening, and they knew the neighborhoods, and so it was just really, hey, like take a quick video of the house so that we know it's somewhat decent, and then we made the offer subject to us actually getting in. And
see, okay, so at some point they were getting in.
Yeah, exactly.
I had one that was completely on me and my eyes, and that was a lot of pressure. It worked out great. But there was a lot of pressure because literally everything was remote, everything was virtual, and then after the closing, that's when they saw the property for the first time.
And was it a magical story?
Happily ever after. Still there, still enjoying it 3 years later, but it was pressure.
Well, the funny thing is, there was like a new statistic out that like I think it's like 70 or 80% of people who bought during the pandemic like had to give on something, so they're actually not like fully in love with their house. And so it's interesting that that statistic is out there.
That is an interesting statistic.
Yeah.
But I think, the moral of the story is we've sold homes completely remotely. So so anything less than that we can handle. But it just takes a little bit more strategy, a little bit more planning, and ideally if we can get a little face-to-face time, that's really, really invaluable time.
Yeah.